By now, most of us have seen the disconcerting interviews that have been conducted with troubled and dangerous individuals such as Charles Manson, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer and Ed Kemper. Here we have a selection of fascinating and sinister interviews that you may not be so familiar with, so sit back and enjoy. Wayne Bent. In 2007, filmmaker Ben Anthony made a documentary about a religious cult named the Lord of Our Righteousness Church, led by a self-appointed messiah, Michael Travessa. The group, consisting of approximately 60 members at the time, resided in Strong City, located in a remote area of New Mexico. Ben sought to discover the truth behind rumours that the group were intending to commit suicide after Michael's prediction that the world would end on the 31st of October 2007. But he also wanted to examine the dynamic between Michael and the other church members. Michael, whose real name is Wayne Bent, used to be a Seventh-day Adventist pastor until breaking with the church in 1987 and forming his own religion. Michael claims he later had a vision from God, informing him that he was the Messiah. Michael gave several interviews to Ben, who was curious to discover the truth behind allegations that he had engaged in improper conduct with several teenage girls within the church, some of whom were under the age of sexual consent. Ben asked Michael about the rumours that he had lain naked with these young women, and inquired into why this had occurred. Michael's answer, and the parallels he draws between himself and the medical profession, is unnerving in its delusion.
Why did they want to lie naked with you on the bed, do you think, Michael?
Well, it was God. God came down on them and told them to do it.
Why naked?
Nakedness is another symbol of our relationship with God. We are naked and unashamed.
But of course they thought they were lying skin to skin with Father, in effect.
Yes.
Not with a man.
Yes. And I treated them that way. And so I treated them with the same respect and deference as if I'd been a physician, an MD, who was doing surgery. MDs are with naked people. And they do, MDs even put their fingers in women's sexual parts. And they call it pap smears or whatever else they do. But
you don't think there's a distinction between a doctor and yourself?
I would say no. I would say I would have more authority to touch the soul than an MD would. MDs aren't prepared for what I've had to do. An MD is far more likely to think of sex when he's doing something to a woman in her private parts than I am. I don't look at people like that.
It's also revealed that Michael has slept with many of the wives of his male congregation, most shockingly his own daughter-in-law, Christina. He explains to Ben, without much conviction, what led to this occurrence, with the most heartbreaking aspect of the film, not only the despairing stance taken by his betrayed son Jeff, but also the clear devotion the church members have to their softly spoken but manipulative leader.
I stood up like this, and suddenly I was forced down on the floor, and I had to get down. I was down just about like this, and I was in pain, and all I could do was groan. All I could do was kind of rock, and I started seeing that the consummation with Christiana was imminent, and I was going to be I was going to have to do that.
I was just laying awake, and I was thinking about coming over here. And I said to Father, I said, when I go over there, if Michael invites me in, I will ask for the consummation tonight.
So was it just a single occasion, this literal physical consummation?
No. It wasn't.
But you consummated more than once.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Why is it necessary to consummate more than once?
Could you not answer that question yourself? When you marry a wife, do you consummate only once? Does she stop being married to you after your wedding day?
The world, they would look at it a different way. You know, they would just see that an affair happened or something. But that's not what happened.
I am divinity and humanity combined.
Ben later challenges Michael about the issue of how fair it is for children born or brought into the cult by their parents to be unable to experience life away from his influence. His response about what real life consists of is chillingly reductive, providing the young people living under his rule with little reality about the joys and diversity that the world can offer.
Follow your conscience. Do what God tells you.
See, people outside say, well, you know, it's fine if you're an adult and you join a group like this because that's a choice you make. But when children are born into groups like this, they say, well, these children have not really made a choice about it. They've been born into it. And that this is the world that they know. This is the only world that they know.
Excuse them, Ben. They're laughing at you because they know very well they made a choice. These children have found life. They've found the more to life that your world does not possess.
They wouldn't know that though, would they? Because they've never really had an opportunity to experience it properly.
How do you experience the world properly?
When it's not skewed by your interpretation of it.
Well, let me tell you, Ben, my son and I were raised in your world. I was educated in your world. I know very well how empty it is, and it goes nowhere. All you got is your DVD movies, going to the cinema, waging wars, paying your debts. That's all you have. When really, the world properly is to hear God speak to you, have Him fulfill His purposes in you, and feel the exhilaration of just talking with angels, where you do real things and not just things that keep your lusts satisfied for a while.
But doesn't this group just satisfy your needs, Michael? This church is really about your needs, isn't it?
It's about my sacrifice. I've sacrificed my life for them, and it began 7 years ago. My life is theirs. Everything I have given to them.
Thankfully, like the world, the group did not meet their demise on October the 31st, 2007. And although Michael is not extreme in comparison to cult leaders such as the Reverend Jim Jones or David Koresh, Ben's interviews with him for his documentary, The Cult at the End of the World, depict a man willing to exploit the beliefs of his followers for his personal gain, as members are expected to not only give Michael access to their wives, but also to all of their worldly goods. There is something in the smiling face and eerie calm with which Michael is ready to profess his word and actions as being that of God's will, and this group's ready acceptance of this that is profoundly disconcerting to observe. Franz Surjamel. The Holocaust remains one of the most horrifying atrocities of the 20th century, and the heinous acts committed against the Jewish community, political and religious dissidents, selected ethnic groups, gay men, the mentally ill, and the handicapped have become the subject of many books, films, and programs over the years. Perhaps one of the best known and respected resources on the subject is Claude Lanzmann's 9.5-hour documentary, Shoah. Made over a period of 11 years, Claude interviewed survivors, guards, and eyewitnesses from the German death camps located in Poland. One such interview took place in 1976, conducted with the assurance that the subject would retain total anonymity. The man Claude had offered this assurance to was Franz Surjamel, a former SS officer who worked at Treblinka extermination camp throughout 1942, before being moved to Sobibor in 1943. However, unbeknownst to Franz, Claude had instructed his colleagues to secretly film the interview from a camper van parked in the street outside the hotel the interview was conducted in. Prompted by Claude's questions, Franz provided a vivid account of the conditions and scenes he witnessed at Treblinka. The painful subject matter and the emotionally detached tone employed by Franz is only compounded by the knowledge that he served a mere 6 years as an accessory to murder. The estimated number of people killed at Treblinka in 1942 stands at 850,000. Franz Sugermal, who was paid 500 Deutschmarks by Claude for this interview, died in 1979, aged 72. Teresa, Satan's Children. In 1989, journalist Ian Leslie investigated the practice of satanic ritual abuse within the UK for the Australian version of the news and current affairs programme 60 Minutes. During this investigation, he interviewed a young woman named Teresa, who claimed that from a very young age, her grandmother had subjected her to a catalogue of horrific abuse at the hands of a group of Satan worshippers, of which she was the leader. Here, Teresa details some of the appalling treatment she had to endure.
And us kids would be made to do things with the adults and the animals, and then a sacrifice would happen.
The sacrifice, were these animal sacrifices?
Animals and people.
How many men or how many people would have sex with you?
What, at one time?
Yes.
About everyone who was there, which must have been about 20. You know, from 10 to 20 people. If it was a big ceremony, it used to be 30.
What would your grandma be doing when these men were forcing themselves on you?
Usually laughing. Or smiling. Or having sex with another man. Or other men.
Teresa claims that due to being continually raped throughout a series of satanic ceremonies, this led to her enduring a series of pregnancies from the tender age of 11. It's her account about the fate of these children that is perhaps the most astonishing and upsetting aspect of the interview.
What happened to the pregnancies, to the babies?
They were aborted by my nan or by one of the doctors at the house.
There were doctors there at that house?
Yeah, there was 2, I think. Yeah, and a nurse.
What would happen to the fetuses, the unborn babies?
I used to be taken away most of the time, and one time baby was taken out of me and then killed in front of me because it was still alive.
And then, what would happen?
Well, after they killed it, they would eat it. But we were also made to eat it.
You were made to eat your own fetus?
Yeah.
This interview formed a large part of the 60 Minutes broadcast, titled Satan's Children, with Ian also interviewing Teresa's mother, whom had entrusted Teresa's grandmother to look after her daughter while she was in the process of a painful divorce. Ian interviewed Teresa again a year later as part of a special report for Network 10 called The Devil Made Me Do It, which looked at an apparent escalation of satanic-related crimes that occurred in Australia, the USA and the UK during the late 1980s. The reported incidents with links to Satanism during this time period has since been dubbed the Satanic Panic, with perhaps one of the most noted cases of the era being the McMartin preschool trial. This involved an accusation of satanic ritual abuse taking place at a Californian preschool, with the pupils quizzed by both police and social workers. This produced extraordinary claims about both sexual abuse and paranormal activity occurring at the establishment. The police investigation led to trials lasting over a period of 6 years, and ran to a cost of $15 million. However, due to a lack of evidence, unreliable witnesses, and the revelation that many people's testimonies were the result of false memory syndrome, the case concluded without any convictions. Though Teresa provides a graphic and unsettling picture of satanic abuse, could it be that she too suffered from false memory syndrome? We haven't been able to find any current information on Teresa, but can only hope she is now safe and living a life removed from any past trauma she may have suffered. Beth Thomas, the Child of Rage. In 1999, HBO broadcast a documentary called Child of Rage, a story of abuse, in which a 6-year-old girl named Beth Thomas is interviewed by psychologist Dr. Ken McGidd. Beth and her brother were adopted aged 19 and 7 months respectively after their mother died, and doctors discovered that their biological father was sexually abusing his young daughter. The residual mental trauma that Beth suffered led her to develop psychopathic behaviour, leaving her adoptive parents to fear for their safety and that of Beth's brother John. Here, Beth gives a chillingly candid insight into her thoughts and behaviour, and reveals how she feigns innocence to her parents about a set of knives she has taken.
Do you ever stick pins in people?
Mm-hmm.
Who?
My brother.
Okay. Do you do it a little bit or a lot?
A lot.
Okay. And what are you trying to do to your brother?
Kill him.
Why do you want your brother to die?
Because I was hurt so bad, and I don't want to be around people.
Okay. Who else would you like to stick pins into?
Mommy and Daddy.
What would you like to have happen to them?
Die.
Tell me about the knives. Where did you get them?
From the drawer.
And where else? Do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about it.
I got them from the dishwasher.
What kind of knives?
Big sharp ones.
And what do you want to do with those knives?
Kill John and Mommy with them, and Daddy.
And when Mommy asks you about where the knives are, what do you say?
I don't know where they are.
The documentary revealed Beth had attempted to kill her brother by slamming his head against a concrete floor, and that she had molested him as a result of behaviour learned from her abusive father. Petrified by Beth's violence, her parents locked her door at night and installed a motion sensor which triggered an alarm if she attempted to leave her bedroom after she had been put to bed. Beth was diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder, which often manifests in abnormal behaviour such as the inability to connect emotionally with other people or develop a sense of empathy. Children with reactive attachment disorder may harm animals, family members, or themselves. This disorder is often a result of a child suffering from a neglectful or abusive relationship with a parent or caregiver, as was the case for young Beth. Such was the severity of her disorder that Beth was sent to a treatment centre for children with behavioural issues. Here she was subjected to a strict regime where her every movement was monitored, combined with an affectionate approach to teaching her right from wrong. Her behaviour improved, and she began to realise the consequences of how her actions affected her, as well as those she wished to hurt, and can be seen in this poignant moment.
Do you know where that anger came from?
That's when my birth dad hurt me. I had it all inside, and I remembered it, and I started doing it.
And what did that do when it was inside you?
It made me want to hurt people really bad.
And who did you hurt?
My brother, my mom and dad, and animals. And animals.
Who did it hurt the most?
My brother.
Who did it hurt the most?
Me.
Why don't you tell me that?
It hurt me
the most.
How did it hurt you the most?
Because when I hurt other people, I'm hurting my good self. How you feel right now, Dad? Bad.
It's kind of tough to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is.
Thankfully, there was a happy ending for Beth. After receiving intense therapy, she grew up into a caring, well-adjusted young woman. She went on to study nursing and is now an award-winning neonatal nurse, author, and public speaker. Joseph Kallinger. In 1975, police in Philadelphia arrested 39-year-old cobbler Joseph Kallinger for theft, terrorizing, and sexually assaulting 4 families in their own homes, and for the murder of 3 people, including his own son. Perhaps even more disturbing is the fact that his 13-year-old son Michael had been his accomplice. Joseph had been a troubled individual since childbirth, after being subjected to physical and emotional abuse at the hands of his adopted parents. He put these same cruel practices into play when raising his own 7 children, 2 of whom reported their father to the police for mistreatment and abuse. He had branded his daughter with a hot iron, and the children were routinely stripped and beaten. Though he was found guilty of child abuse in 1972, he was sentenced to 4 years probation and given mandatory psychiatric treatment. He disclosed to staff that he was on a divine mission, and that by formulating a special design of shoe, he could help people who suffered from, in his words, a malfunctioning brain. By 1974, Joseph was suffering from severe delusions. He held conversations with a disembodied head he referred to as Charlie, and proclaimed he had received orders from God to murder and mutilate young boys. At this point, he enlisted the help of his son Michael, and the duo tortured, maimed, and murdered 10-year-old Jose Calazo. Joseph's spiraling mental state led him to escalate his crime spree. He set fire to his home in order to obtain payment from his insurance company. When he was successful in his claim, he took out a $45,000 life insurance on his son Joey, and, anticipating the company would comply in paying him, he drowned Joey and buried him underneath a pile of rubble on a demolition site. But this time, the company was suspicious and refused to pay out the policy. Between November 1974 and January 1975, Joseph and Michael broke into houses in Philadelphia, Baltimore, and New Jersey, where they stole $20,000 worth of possessions and stripped, tied, molested, and terrorized the homeowners. Their third victim was a 21-year-old nurse named Mariah Fashing. After sexually abusing her, Joseph slit her throat before escaping the scene of the crime. The pair were arrested after a blood-stained shirt found close to the crime scene was traced back to Joseph. Michael, still a child, was found to have acted under the compulsion of his father and was sent to a reform school, before being fostered and given a new identity. Joseph, diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, was sentenced to 40 years in prison, where his mental health continued to deteriorate. In 1988, Joseph was interviewed by investigative journalist Geraldo Rivera. He gives a frank account of his frightening urges, and his deteriorated mental state is both sad and profoundly unsettling to see, perhaps most of all for the interviewer. Take a look.
Here at the State Hospital for the Criminally Insane, just outside Scranton, Pennsylvania.
I'm a patient person, got a good listening ear, and try to help people.
You're a patient with a good ear, and you try to help people.
Yes.
When you're not trying to murder them.
Yes.
When Kallinger's reign of terror ended, 3 were dead, including his 14-year-old son.
You murdered your own son?
Yes, I did.
Why did you do that?
He was a sacrifice. I was to murder 3 million people of planet Earth, and he was a sacrifice to see if I could murder one of my own. At the end of murdering all the people on Earth, I was going to murder my own family and then take my own life and become God.
What do you think of the death penalty?
I'm opposed to it.
The state has no right to take your life, but you can murder other people?
I don't think anyone has the right to take a life.
Except you?
When I'm under hallucination, I do.
These voices from God, these hallucinations, do you still experience them?
Yes, I do.
Often?
Often.
Do you ever feel violent?
Yes, I do.
What do you feel like doing?
Killing people.
You still feel like killing people?
Yes.
Describe the feeling that you get when you feel like killing people.
Well, last March 11th, I was hallucinating, and I took a razor blade and I cut a man's throat.
Here in the hospital?
Here in the hospital.
Do you think you'd murder me, Joe?
Yes.
That's gruesome, Joe. That's horrible.
Yes, it is.
And you don't blame me if I say I hope you never get out of this place.
I hope I never do either.
Joseph died in 1996 at 59 years of age, after suffering an epileptic fit. The whereabouts of Michael and the rest of the Callinger family remains unknown. So that's 5 incredibly disturbing interviews. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.